Hey everybody, how's it going? I wanted to make this video here to just document the new tripod setup that I recently purchased. As you can see here, the CZ457 is sitting on top of it, and when I was looking for a new tripod setup, I wanted something that was sturdy and stable enough that I could use for shooting my rifles off of. So that said, this video is going to be more from the perspective of me using it for my firearms rather than for photography. Obviously, the fact that it's stable enough to shoot my rifle off of, it's going to support any camera I have. The wife has a few heavier SLRs, so I'm sure she'll be using the tripod a little bit for herself, but my primary concern was to make sure that I could shoot my 457 off of. Now the CZ here is a rimfire, so if you were to shoot some heavier recoiling center fire, you probably want something that's rated for a little bit more load capacity. And I know Really Right Stuff has their SOAR division for specifically optics and rifle shooting that you might want to look into, but you're going to pay a much higher price point for that. And I figure for the amount of money you're paying for this Manfrotto setup, if you're only going to be shooting rimfire or maybe 223 center fire off of it, it's a really good option. It's rock solid, a fraction of the price as some of the more expensive options out there, and it gets you started in shooting off tripod, which is something that I've wanted to try for a while now. There's a lot of practical reasons why you might want to shoot off a tripod if you're varmint hunting over tall brush and stuff, but it's also very popular in the competition scene. It's not new by any means, it's been done for many years, but it's just something that I haven't done much, and I just wanted to get a setup that I could just try it out on, but not break the bank as well. So the legs I ended up getting here are a set of 055 series legs from Manfrotto. These are the aluminum versions in 3 sections. These are pretty heavy duty. I don't think they're studio specific legs, but just to give you an idea, the legs that the camera you're watching from now are sitting on is a set of 290 extra legs from Manfrotto, and those came with a carrying bag. The 055 series did not come with a carrying bag, and I think that just kind of shows what Manfrotto expects you to use the tripod for, which is not carrying it around all day. So it is kind of heavy and robust, but that's exactly what I wanted. Just to give you an idea, the middle sections of these legs, the 055 legs, just going by feel, are approximately the same diameter as the top sections on the 290 extras. So obviously the top sections here on the 055s are even more beefy. The entire tripod setup is really nice and steady, and they lock up really nicely. These sections are quite nice. The locking tabs have a very tactile feel when you're opening and closing them, and the legs do slide freely when they're unlocked, which is a nice feature. So the 055s here do have the feature where you can swing the legs out past their default stopping point. There's just a tab here where you pull down to disengage the locking mechanism, and you can swing the leg out even further. This is really nice if you want to get really low to the ground, both for photography or shooting a rifle off of if you're sitting or kneeling. And I think there's 3 or 4 locking points past the default. So if you want to get low to the ground, you can do that pretty easily, and they're still nice and solid in each position. This particular 055 model does come with a bubble level, which is nice, and it also does come with the horizontal middle column feature, which obviously you're not going to use for shooting your rifle off of, but I thought I would just mention that. The legs are really sturdy, they lock up very well, and on the ground, with any tripod, I don't care how expensive it is, there's always going to be some movement, but this does lock up very nicely. 2 of the legs have a pretty thick rubber grip on it, which is really nice if you're using it in cold weathers and you're grabbing it with your bare hands. You don't have to freeze your hand off. So the legs themselves I'm very impressed with. I think for the price you can't really go wrong with them. So talking about weight capacity rating, obviously with the heavier rimfire rifle on it here, I had to make sure that both the legs and the ball head were within capacity. So that being said, the rifle as it's built up right now, I don't think I've showed it on video yet, but I have installed some interior weights here from MDT, as well as this bag rider. So it's actually sitting above 14 pounds. I think it's 14.6 pounds right now, which is well over 6 kilos. I think it's closer to 7 kilos. The legs here, the 055s, are rated for 9 kilograms, and the ball head is rated for 10 kilograms. So I am actually approaching the limit a little bit closer than what I would have liked, but so far I've had no issues whatsoever, and it does lock up both the legs and the ball head, lock up really nice and secure. So I'm not too worried about it, especially with a brand like Manfrotto. The fact that the weight distribution on a rifle is so much more spread out than a camera, it is putting a little bit different strain on the system as as compared to a normal camera with just a lens on it. So I do keep that in mind. That's kind of why I say if you're going to be shooting center fire off a tripod setup, you might want to look at something specific for rifle shooting. But as it is right now, the setup's been working really nicely. I've had no issues with it. I even preload the system a little bit with my shoulder, and it's been rock solid. I haven't had any issues with it showing any signs of inability to support the almost 7 kilogram rifle on top of it. So going on to the ball head here, there's a lot of features that I think actually make it pretty good for shooting rifles off of. The specific version is called the XPRO ball head, and there's two different versions. This is the version with Manfrotto's top lock design, and it's basically their Arca rail compatible system that doesn't use the Manfrotto plate, which obviously works really nicely if you have a full Arca rail like on this MDT chassis. I guess I'll start at the top. The locking system works really nicely. There's just one knob that loosens the actual Arca lock, but there's still a safety release so that either your camera or in this case your rifle doesn't just fall out of the mount as soon as you undo the lock. It only takes about maybe a rotation and a half or so, and the rifle is now loose in the mount, but as you can see, it's not going to fall out. You have to hit this red safety release button on the front of the plate here in order to release the item from the top of the mount. Now, looking on the top of the mount here, there is a pin that is spring-loaded and protrudes out from the plate. This would usually be a safety catch for the Manfrotto plate that comes with it, so your camera doesn't just slide off the mount when the side lock here is loose. Do note that if your Arca rail has holes on the underside of it, like on this MDT chassis, this pin will engage and it won't allow you to slide your rifle through the mount freely. So you have to put it down in the position you want it to and then lock it down that way. It's not a huge deal for me because I'm always going to be running this mount as far back on the Arca rail as possible, and I don't want it sliding anyway. I guess you could remove the pin if you wanted to, but I don't see a reason to, and it doesn't really bother me. So installing and removing the rifle from the Manfrotto XPRO ball head here is extremely simple and easy to do. It's also very quick. You just place it down onto the mount. You'll hear it kind of click into place, and then you just screw down the side knob here and it's nice and solid. To remove it, it's the opposite with the addition of hitting that safety release button. You just unscrew the side knob, hit the safety release button, and in 3 seconds flat, your rifle is off the tripod. So it works really nicely, and I'm pretty impressed with it so far. So there's 3 knobs on the external sides of the base of the ball head here. Your main knob that you're going to use the most when you're shooting a rifle is going to be this main articulation lock for the ball itself. Loosening it obviously will free up the articulation of the ball itself, so you have free motion, pan up and down, side to side, whatever you want, and it is actually quite nice and smooth. I was pretty impressed with that. With this fairly heavy 14.5 pound rifle on it, it seems to be just fine. The knob in front of it here actually adjusts the pre-tension on the articulation when the ball is unlocked. So I have it maxed out right now to as much tension as possible. Because the rifle is so heavy, it actually works quite well. If I do go ahead and loosen the tension adjustment knob here, you can see how floppy the entire system gets. But obviously for a heavy rifle like that, it's not something you want. So I basically keep it maxed out all the way when I'm using the CZ457 off it. So locking the rifle down into place here, the last adjustment knob on the side here is for the pan only. So it doesn't unlock the ball articulation, it unlocks the base so that it can swivel on the tripod legs, which is pretty cool. You do have a full 360-degree pan, and it might be good for photography, but honestly for using the rifle, it's not something I use, but it is there, again, for the photography aspect of it. So the ball mount itself, I'm very impressed with. It's really, really solid. I was actually testing out, I shouldn't say testing out, I tried my buddy's Really Right Stuff tripod as well as their anvil head from their sword division. And it was very impressive in its own right, but for the price you're paying for this Manfrotto setup, if you're just shooting rimfire off it, it locks up as mechanically sound as anything else would. The weight capacity rating is obviously lower, but it's not something that concerns me, especially with just rimfire. But again, you're not going to get much better than this Manfrotto, especially for the money. Now, when you're behind a tripod shooting, it looks, in pictures and videos, it looks like it'd be an extremely stable position to shoot from, and you're basically just bench shooting off a tripod. In reality though, and those of you who've done it, you know this is true, again, it doesn't really matter how nice your tripod is, there's always going to be some movement. The fact that your rifle is being held off the ground by 3 sticks, basically, there's going to be movement in the system, and it's actually more difficult to get steady behind than you might expect. So it's actually a really cool experience to try shooting off a tripod. I wanted to try it, again, just out of curiosity, watching a lot of matches online. But also it's a good way of practicing positional shooting, because this way I can practice shooting off different levels off the ground without having to bring a big heavy barricade with me to the range that has the different elevations to practice off of. So the tripod is really cool. It's not as rock solid as you might expect. There's still quite a bit of movement in the system that you have to try and overcome. So the last thing I thought I'd mention is try not to use the center column adjustment for actually holding up the rifle. The legs are much more secure to use for your elevation adjustment. What I mean by that is if you need the rifle to be a little bit higher off the ground, try to avoid actually using the center column here to adjust the height of it, because the locking mechanism is a lot weaker than the legs. And I found after some time, especially again with this heavier rifle, the column will start to lock down. So I know actually a lot of shooters will cut the center column so that they can get lower to the ground with the legs out on greater angles. Because if you don't, the center column will contact the ground before the legs can go all the way down for you. Now, since this tripod is a dual purpose tripod for me, both for shooting and photography, I decided not to cut the center column. Anyway, this is just a video again to document the new tripod setup, the 055 aluminum legs, as well as the XPRO ball head from Manfrotto. I'm very happy with it. Again, it's not designed specifically for rifle shooting, but I think it works really nicely if you don't want to break the bank and you want to try it out. If you're shooting rimfire, this is going to be more than solid enough for you. This CZ here is probably one of the heavier builds for rimfire at around 14.5 pounds now, and this Manfrotto setup doesn't struggle whatsoever to hold the weight of it. So I've been very impressed. The Manfrotto products in the past that I've had have always been top-notch, so I wasn't hesitant to purchase this setup at all. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.